You want to thicken up? You're making me late. Step away from my car.
Who's that?
This ride isn't for you. I'm calling the police.
I'll leave your back.
I said no, you need to step back from my car. The words hung in the crisp morning air like a slap. Maya Richardson stood frozen on the sidewalk, her leather briefcase still in hand, staring at the driver who had just refused her service. Behind her, the glass towers of downtown Seattle reflected the early sun, indifferent witnesses to what was unfolding. "Excuse me?" Maya's voice was steady, but her heart had begun to race. She glanced at her phone. The luxury car service app clearly showed her reservation. Black SUV, license plate matching, driver name Derek Walsh. Derek leaned against his vehicle, arms crossed over a pressed white shirt, sunglasses hiding his eyes. "You heard me. This ride isn't for you. There's been a mistake." A mistake. The word felt deliberately chosen, carefully placed. Maya had heard versions of this her entire life, subtle redirections that carried the weight of something uglier beneath the surface. "The app confirms my reservation," she said, holding up her screen. "I booked this ride 20 minutes ago. I have a flight to catch." "Look, I don't know how you got this reservation, but this car is assigned to a corporate client. VIP service. You probably booked the wrong tier." His tone suggested she couldn't possibly afford the service she'd already paid for. Behind Maya, other pedestrians began to slow their pace. A woman in yoga pants paused. A man in a business suit glanced over his shoulder. The sidewalk audience was forming, that peculiar modern phenomenon where strangers become witnesses, their phones already half raised. Maya felt the familiar burn in her chest, the one that came from swallowing words that wanted to explode outward. She was 42 years old, a woman who had built a career on grace under pressure, on strategic thinking, on never letting them see you rattled. But standing here, publicly refused service she had legally purchased, she felt something ancient and exhausting wash over her. "I am the corporate client," she said quietly, "and I need to get to the airport now." Derek pushed off from the car, taking a step closer. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to cancel this ride and find another service. I don't have time for this confusion." "Where are you from? Tell us in the comments below. And if you're loving this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more." 24 hours earlier, Maya Richardson had been in her element. The conference room on the 43rd floor overlooked Elliott Bay, and Maya sat at the head of the long glass table, reviewing quarterly reports with her team. She wore her authority lightly but unmistakably, a navy blazer over a silk blouse, her natural hair pulled back in a way that was both professional and unapologetically herself. At 42, she had learned to occupy space without apology, to lead without performing toughness, to command respect through competence rather than volume. "The expansion into Portland is ahead of schedule," her chief operating officer, James, was saying. "We're looking at a 15% increase in ridership compared to our projections." Maya nodded, making notes on her tablet. She had co-founded Cascade Elite Transport 8 years ago with her husband, Thomas. What had started as a small luxury car service with 5 vehicles had grown into the Pacific Northwest's premier transportation company. With a fleet of 200 cars, partnerships with every major hotel and corporation in the city, and a reputation for excellence that had become the industry standard. But while Thomas handled the public-facing elements, the press conferences and ribbon cuttings, Maya had always preferred to work behind the scenes. She was the architect of their success, the strategist who had mapped their growth, negotiated their contracts, and built the operational systems that made everything run seamlessly. She knew every driver, every route, every client complaint, and every opportunity for improvement. Her assistant, Keisha, a sharp 28-year-old who had been with the company for 3 years, leaned in during a break. "Mrs. Richardson, don't forget you have that flight to San Francisco tomorrow morning, 9:45. "Already booked a car through our own service," Maya said with a slight smile. "I like to spot-check the customer experience, see what our clients actually encounter." Keisha laughed. "You're going to terrify some poor driver when they realize who you are." "Only if they're not doing their job right." That evening, Maya went home to the house she and Thomas had bought in the Madison Park neighborhood 5 years ago, a modern structure of glass and wood that sat on a hillside overlooking the water. Thomas was in the kitchen when she arrived, attempting to cook something that involved more pans than seemed necessary. "How's my brilliant wife?" he asked, kissing her cheek. Thomas Richardson was 50, with silver threading through his dark hair and laugh lines around his eyes that deepened when he smiled. He'd been a venture capitalist when they met, the kind of man who saw potential where others saw risk. He'd seen it in Maya immediately, investing in her vision when banks had dismissed her business plan as too ambitious. "Your brilliant wife is going undercover tomorrow," Maya said, stealing a piece of whatever he was chopping. "Booked a ride with our own company. Want to see how our drivers perform when they think they're picking up just another client." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "You know most of our drivers would recognize you." "Not the newer ones. We've hired 40 drivers in the past 3 months. I want to see what our training actually produces in the field." What Maya didn't mention, what she rarely mentioned to anyone, was the tightrope she walked daily. In meetings with investors, in negotiations with corporate clients, she'd grown accustomed to the subtle double takes, the momentary recalibrations when people realized she wasn't the assistant or the HR representative but the actual decision-maker. She'd learned to read the micro-expressions, the slight pauses, the way some people's body language shifted when they understood that this black woman held the power in the room. She'd built her company to be different. Cascade Elite Transport had a driver diversity rate of 60%, well above industry standard. Their training emphasized respect, professionalism, and the understanding that every client deserved the same excellent service regardless of appearance, accent, or assumed social status. But Maya also knew that policies and training could only go so far. Culture was built in 1,000 small moments, in how people behaved when no one important was watching. Tomorrow she would be watching. The morning had started smoothly. Maya woke at 6, went through her routine, and dressed in what she thought of as her deliberate casual look, designer jeans, a simple black sweater, minimal jewelry. She wanted to see how a driver would treat someone who didn't broadcast wealth or status, someone who could be anyone. She'd scheduled the pickup for 7:30, giving herself plenty of time to reach SeaTac Airport for her 9:45 flight. The reservation came through on her phone with perfect clarity. Black Escalade, driver Derek Walsh, pickup at her home address. At 7:28, she stood outside her gate, briefcase in hand, watching the quiet street. Madison Park was still waking up, the kind of neighborhood where quiet money lived behind tasteful facades. The Escalade appeared exactly on time, sliding up to her curb with the smooth precision she expected from her company's vehicles. Maya approached the passenger side, her hand already reaching for the door handle when Derek's window rolled down. "Excuse me, this is a private reservation," he called out, his tone already carrying an edge. Maya paused, confused. "Yes, I know, I'm Maya Richardson. I booked this ride." Derek's eyes, visible now as he pushed his sunglasses up, scanned her with undisguised skepticism. He glanced at his tablet, then back at her, then at the house behind her, as if calculating whether someone like her could possibly live in a place like this. "The reservation is for an M. Richardson," he said slowly, as if explaining something to a child. "Are you sure you have the right company? There are several car services in the area." The implication was clear. Perhaps she'd gotten confused. Perhaps she'd wandered into the wrong neighborhood. Perhaps she was someone's housekeeper or nanny trying to use a reservation that didn't belong to her. Maya felt the first flutter of anger but kept her voice level. "M. Richardson is me, Maya Richardson. I booked this ride through the Cascade Elite Transport app at 6:45 this morning. Your license plate matches my reservation." Derek's jaw tightened. He looked at his tablet again, his finger scrolling with exaggerated slowness. "I'm showing this pickup for a corporate executive, VIP tier service. This is a premium reservation." "Yes," Maya said, her patience beginning to fray. "I'm aware. I selected VIP service because I'm going to the airport and I have luggage." Something shifted in Derek's expression, a hardening that Maya recognized immediately. She'd seen it before, in boardrooms, in restaurants, in country clubs, where she'd been the only person who looked like her. It was the look of someone who had decided that the world wasn't making sense according to their expectations, and rather than adjusting their expectations, they were going to enforce their version of reality. "Ma'am, I think there's been some kind of identity confusion here," Derek said, his voice taking on a patronizing quality that made Maya's skin prickle. "These VIP reservations are for verified corporate accounts, high-level executives. I need to see your company credentials." "You need to see my credentials," Maya repeated slowly, "for a ride I've already paid for." "It's company policy," Derek said, which Maya knew for a fact was a complete lie. She'd written the company policies herself. A neighbor, Mrs. Chen, was now standing on her porch 3 houses down, clearly watching. Across the street, a man walking his dog had stopped, his attention caught by the rising tension. Maya pulled out her phone, opening the app to show her reservation confirmation. "Here, my name, my payment method, my pickup address, your vehicle, your name, everything matches." Derek barely glanced at it. "I don't know how you accessed this account, but I'm going to need to verify this reservation with my dispatch before I can proceed. This doesn't feel right." The accusation was implicit but unmistakable. Somehow she had gotten access to something that wasn't meant for her. Somehow she was trying to use a service above her station. Somehow she was the problem. "Call your dispatch then," Maya said, her voice harder now. "But do it quickly, I have a flight to catch." Derek made no move to make a call. Instead, he stepped out of the vehicle, positioning himself between Maya and the passenger door. He was 6'2", broad-shouldered, using his physical presence in a way that was just subtle enough to have deniability but clear enough to be intimidating. "Actually, I'm going to need you to cancel this reservation and step away from the vehicle," he said. "I have a legitimate client to pick up, and you're making me late." The legitimate client. The words landed like stones. "I am your client," Maya said, and for the first time her voice rose slightly. "I booked this ride, I paid for this ride, and you're refusing me service based on what exactly?" "Based on the fact that this reservation doesn't make sense," Derek shot back. "Based on the fact that I've been driving VIP clients for 3 years, and I know what they look like." There it was, out in the open now. I know what they look like. The audience on the sidewalk had grown. Mrs. Chen had come down from her porch. The man with the dog had pulled out his phone. A woman jogging past had stopped, her earbuds dangling, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning outrage as she pieced together what was happening. Maya felt a familiar exhaustion settling over her, the bone-deep tiredness of having to prove, again and again, that she belonged in spaces she'd literally built. But beneath the exhaustion was something sharper, something that had been honed over 42 years of being underestimated, dismissed, and doubted. She was done explaining herself. "You have 10 seconds to either let me into this vehicle or provide me with your employee ID number and the name of your supervisor," Maya said, her voice now carrying the unmistakable tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Because I guarantee you, Derek Walsh, this conversation is going to continue with your employer, and it's not going to go the way you think." Derek laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Lady, I don't know who you think you're threatening, but Cascade Elite Transport takes care of its drivers. We don't cave to people trying to scam the system or play the victim card. So why don't you go back inside whatever house you're working in and tell your employer they need to book their own rides?" "Whatever house you're working in." The words hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable in their intent. Maya's hand tightened on her briefcase handle. Around them, she could hear the murmurs of the growing crowd, could sense phones being raised, recording. This moment was being captured, documented, preserved. Good, she thought distantly. Let it be recorded. Let there be evidence. "I'm going to ask you one more time," Maya said, each word precise and controlled. "Are you refusing to provide me the service I've paid for?" "I'm refusing to participate in whatever scam this is," Derek replied. "Now step back or I'm calling the police for harassment." The threat of police hung in the air like smoke. Maya felt her heartbeat spike. that primal response that every black person in America knew, the instant recalculation of danger that came with those words. She was standing outside her own home, holding proof of a legitimate transaction, and yet somehow she was being positioned as the threat. "You're going to call the police," Maya repeated, her voice eerily calm, "because I'm trying to get into a car I paid for." "I'm going to call the police because you're harassing me and refusing to leave," Derek said, pulling out his phone. "This is a safety issue. I don't feel comfortable with your behavior." The gaslight was textbook, the reversal so smooth it might have worked if there weren't a dozen witnesses now gathered on the quiet Madison Park Street. Mrs. Chen had her phone out. The jogger was recording. The man with the dog was already typing something on his phone, probably posting to social media in real time. "Everyone's seeing this, right?" the jogger called out. "He literally just refused her service and now he's calling the cops on her." "Ma'am, please step back," Derek said, his voice louder now, performing for the crowd. "I'm feeling threatened by your aggressive behavior." Maya hadn't moved. She stood exactly where she'd been standing, her briefcase in one hand, her phone in the other, her posture straight but not confrontational. Yet somehow, in Derek's narration, she had become aggressive, threatening, dangerous. "I'm not moving," Maya said quietly. "I'm a paying customer being refused service, and I have every right to stand here until this is resolved." Derek's finger was already dialing. "Seattle Police? Yes, I need assistance. I'm a car service driver and there's a woman here who's harassing me and refusing to leave. I feel unsafe." The performance was remarkable in its audacity. Maya watched him, her mind already 3 steps ahead. She was recording this too, her phone's voice memo app capturing every word. She was thinking about her lawyers, about her PR team, about how this incident would look in the morning news cycle. But she was also thinking about something else. About every driver in her company who might harbor these same assumptions. About every black client who might have experienced this same treatment but didn't have her resources, her knowledge, her power to fight back. About the culture she thought she'd built and the rot that apparently still lived within it. A police car appeared within minutes, which told Maya that Derek had either exaggerated the threat level or the officers had been close by. 2 officers emerged, a white man in his 40s and a younger Asian woman, both with the careful neutral expressions of people walking into a situation they didn't yet understand. "What's the situation here?" the male officer whose name tag read MORRISON asked. Derek immediately launched into his narrative. "Officer, thank you for coming. I'm a driver for Cascade Elite Transport, and I had a VIP pickup scheduled at this address. This woman approached my vehicle claiming to be the client, but something didn't add up. The reservation is for a corporate executive, and when I asked for verification, she became aggressive and refused to leave." Maya waited, letting him finish. She'd learned long ago that patience was its own form of power. Officer Morrison turned to her. "Ma'am, can you explain your side?" "My name is Maya Richardson," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I booked a car service through Cascade Elite Transport this morning at 6:45. The reservation is in my name, paid for with my credit card for a pickup at this address, which is my home. I have the confirmation on my phone. When I approached the vehicle, the driver refused to provide me service, questioned whether I was the actual client, demanded additional verification beyond what's required, and then called the police when I insisted on receiving the service I'd paid for." She handed her phone to Officer Morrison, showing the reservation details, the payment confirmation, and the driver information that clearly matched Derek and his vehicle. The younger officer, Rodriguez, was already looking uncomfortable. She glanced at the house behind Maya, the expensive car in the driveway partially visible through the gate, the neighborhood itself which screamed quiet wealth. Her eyes moved to Derek, and Maya could see the calculation happening. "So you live here?" Morrison asked Maya, his tone shifting slightly. "For 5 years," Maya confirmed. "And this is definitely your reservation?" "It is." Morrison turned to Derek. "Can you explain why you refused service to someone with a valid reservation?" Derek's confidence wavered for the first time. Like I said, something didn't add up. The reservation showed VIP corporate service, and I needed to verify that she was actually authorized to use it. Verify how? Rodriguez asked. She has the reservation, the payment confirmation, and she's standing outside the pickup address. I've been driving VIP clients for 3 years, Derek said, his voice taking on a defensive edge. I know what to look for. There are protocols. What protocols? Maya asked, speaking directly to him for the first time since the police arrived. Please explain to these officers what specific protocols in the Cascade Elite Transport Driver Handbook require additional verification beyond a confirmed reservation, payment, and matching pickup location. Derek faltered. It's common sense, security measures. Security measures against what? Maya pressed. Against clients who have already been verified by the system, against people who don't look the way you expect. I never said anything about how you look, Derek shot back, but his face was flushing now. You didn't have to, Maya said. You said you know what VIP clients look like. You asked if I was sure I had the right company. You suggested I was working in someone else's house. You accused me of scamming the system. Every assumption you made had nothing to do with my reservation and everything to do with your judgment of whether someone like me could be someone who uses premium car services. The crowd murmured in agreement. Mrs. Chen called out, I've seen her leave in these cars 100 times. She lives here. This is ridiculous. Morrison looked increasingly uncomfortable. Mr. Walsh, I'm not seeing grounds for a harassment complaint here. It appears Ms. Richardson has a legitimate reservation and you refused service. That's a civil matter between you and your company. But she was being aggressive, Derek insisted, his voice rising. I reviewed the video that bystander was taking, Rodriguez said, nodding toward the jogger. Ms. Richardson never moved toward you aggressively. She stood in one place the entire time. You're the one who got out of the vehicle and positioned yourself in front of her. Derek's face had gone from red to pale. He looked at the gathered crowd, at their phones, at their expressions of disgust and disbelief. Maya could see the moment reality began to sink in for him, the realization that this wasn't going to be the story he'd tried to write. Look, maybe I overreacted, he said, his tone changing, trying to find an exit. It was a miscommunication. I can give her a ride now if she still needs one. No, Maya said flatly. You absolutely will not. She turned to Officer Morrison. Am I free to go? You were always free to go, ma'am, Morrison said, looking embarrassed. This should never have required police involvement. Maya nodded, pulling out her phone and opening her car service app. I'm booking another ride from a different company. As she did so, she looked directly at Derek. You should know that every ride with Cascade Elite Transport is recorded. There's a GPS log of this vehicle sitting here for the past 20 minutes. There are audio recordings from the internal systems, and there are now about 15 witnesses and multiple videos of what just happened. Derek's eyes widened slightly. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you of facts, Maya said. I'm also informing you that you'll be hearing from Cascade Elite Transport's Human Resources Department very soon. You don't work for the company? Derek scoffed, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. Maya smiled, and it was not a warm expression. Don't I? She could see his mind working, trying to piece together the confidence in her voice. The way the police had quickly shifted their attention to him, the expensive neighborhood, the house behind her. But he couldn't quite get there, couldn't quite make the leap to the truth. Another car pulled up, a different company's logo on the door. The driver, a young woman with purple streaks in her hair, jumped out quickly. Ms. Richardson, I'm here to take you to SeaTac. Thank you, Maya said, walking toward the vehicle. She paused before getting in, turning back to look at Derek one more time. You should know, she said, her voice carrying clearly in the morning air, that I'm going to remember this moment for a very long time, and so will everyone else here. As the car pulled away, Maya sat in the back seat, her hands finally shaking now that the adrenaline was catching up to her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Keisha. Just saw on Twitter. Are you okay? Maya stared at the message, already on social media. The videos spreading, the story beginning to take on a life of its own. She thought about Derek, probably just now realizing the magnitude of his mistake. She thought about her company, the culture she'd worked so hard to build, and the gaps that clearly still existed. She thought about Thomas, who would see the videos soon and would be calling her within the hour, furious on her behalf. But mostly, she thought about the reckoning that was coming. Because Derek Walsh had no idea who he'd just refused service to. He had no idea that the woman he'd dismissed, questioned, and threatened with police action was the co-founder of the very company that employed him. He had no idea that his assumptions and biases had just been documented not just for his employer, but for the entire internet. And by the time he found out, it would be too late to take any of it back. But what happened next changed everything. By the time Maya's flight took off at 9:45, the incident had exploded across social media. The jogger who'd recorded the confrontation had posted it to Twitter with the caption, "Watched at Cascade elite driver refuse service to a black woman with a valid reservation, then call cops on her for harassment. This is Madison Park, Seattle. This is 2024. This is unacceptable." The video had 17,000 views within the first hour. By the time Maya landed in San Francisco at 11:30, it had passed 200,000 views and had been picked up by local news outlets. The hashtag #Cascade Elite Racism was trending regionally. Maya sat in the San Francisco airport, her conference call postponed, watching her phone explode with notifications. News alerts, messages from friends, emails from lawyers, and through it all, radio silence from Cascade Elite Transport's official channels, which meant they hadn't seen it yet or were scrambling to figure out how to respond. She called Thomas. He answered on the first ring. I'm already on my way to the office. Maya, I'm so sorry. I'm so furious I can barely think straight." "Where's James?" Maya asked, referring to their COO. "Pulling Derek Walsh's employee file and all the recordings from this morning. Maya, the GPS logs alone are damning. He sat outside our house for 23 minutes. The internal audio system caught every word he said." "Has anyone reached out to him yet?" "No, I told everyone to wait for you. But Maya, he's texting the dispatch team. He's trying to get ahead of this. He has no idea who you are." Maya felt a cold clarity settling over her. "Keep it that way for now. Let him talk. Let him tell his version. I want to know what story he's going to tell." "The media is calling," Thomas warned. "KOMO, King 5, even some national outlets are picking it up. How do you want to handle this?" "No comment until I'm back in Seattle," Maya said. "But start drafting a statement. And Thomas, I want a full audit of every discrimination complaint we've received in the past 2 years, every single one. If this happened to me, it's happened to others." She hung up and opened Twitter, scrolling through the responses to the video. The comments were exactly what she expected. Outrage, disbelief, calls for boycotts, personal stories from other people who'd experienced similar treatment. But there were also the defenders, the people insisting there must be more to the story, that the driver must have had a good reason, that everyone was being too sensitive. One comment caught her eye. "I bet she doesn't even know who actually owns Cascade Elite. Probably gonna lose his job for protecting the company from a scammer. This is why good people don't want to work anymore." Maya screenshot it. She was building a file in her mind, documenting not just what had happened, but the assumptions that allowed it to happen. Her phone rang again. Unknown number, she answered. "Ms. Richardson, this is Victoria Chen from King 5 News. I'm calling about the incident this morning with Cascade Elite Transport. Would you be willing to speak on camera?" "Not yet," Maya said, "but I'll have a statement soon." "Can you confirm that the video circulating on social media is accurate? That a driver refused you service and called the police?" "I can confirm that I was refused service by a Cascade Elite Transport driver this morning despite having a valid reservation, and that police were called. Beyond that, I'm not commenting until I've spoken with the company." There was a pause. "Ms. Richardson, are you aware that Cascade Elite Transport's co-founder is named Maya Richardson?" Maya smiled. "I am." She could hear Victoria's intake of breath as the pieces clicked together. "Are you the same Maya Richardson?" "I told you I'll have a statement soon," Maya said and ended the call. She booked a return flight to Seattle, canceling her meetings in San Francisco. This was more important. What was happening right now would define her company's future, would test everything she'd built. She needed to be there for it. On the flight back, she received a call from her head of HR, Patricia, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd been with the company for 6 years. "I've reviewed Derek Walsh's file," Patricia said without preamble. "He's been with us for 18 months, generally good performance reviews, no previous complaints in his record." "No complaints that were reported," Maya corrected. "I want to know if there were any incidents that didn't make it to formal complaints. Talk to other drivers, talk to dispatch. I want the full picture." "Already on it," Patricia said. "Maya, I have to ask, what do you want the outcome to be here?" Maya looked out the airplane window at the clouds below. "I want the truth, whatever that is. If this was an isolated incident by one person, we deal with it. If this is systemic, we fix the system. But I will not protect anyone who treated a client the way I was treated this morning." "Understood." "And Patricia, Derek still doesn't know who I am, correct?" "Correct, we haven't contacted him yet." "Good, let's keep it that way a little longer." By the time Maya landed back in Seattle at 7 p.m., the story had gone national. CNN had picked it up. The hashtag was trending nationwide. Cascade Elite Transport's social media accounts were being flooded with comments demanding accountability. And Derek Walsh had given an interview. Maya watched it on her phone in the backseat of an Uber, a different kind of car service now, with a driver who recognized her immediately and seemed honored to have her as a passenger. Derek sat in what appeared to be his living room, being interviewed by a local reporter. He looked tired, defensive, but also defiant. "I've been a driver for Cascade Elite for 18 months, he was saying. "I take pride in my work. I provide excellent service to high-profile clients. What happened this morning was a misunderstanding that's been blown completely out of proportion." "You called the police on a customer with a valid reservation," the reporter pressed. "I called the police because I felt unsafe," Derek insisted. "This person was being aggressive, refusing to leave when I asked them to. I have a right to protect myself." "Multiple witnesses say she never approached you aggressively." "They don't know what I was feeling. They don't understand the pressure drivers are under, the threats we face. We have to make judgment calls about safety, and sometimes those calls are misinterpreted." Maya's hands tightened on her phone. "There are allegations that you made racist assumptions about Ms. Richardson," the reporter said. Derek's face hardened. "I don't see color, I see behavior. I see red flags. I've driven hundreds of black clients and never had an issue. This isn't about race. This is about someone trying to use a service they didn't properly book, getting caught, and then playing the victim card." Playing the victim card? There it was. "But Ms. Richardson did have a proper booking," the reporter pointed out. "The reservation was confirmed, paid for, and matched your vehicle." "Then there was a glitch in the system," Derek said, waving his hand dismissively. "Technology isn't perfect. I was trying to verify the reservation through proper channels when she escalated the situation." Maya turned off the video. She'd heard enough. When she arrived at Cascade Elite Transport's headquarters, a modern building in the Sodu district, she found Thomas, James, Patricia, and their head of communications, Marcus, waiting in the main conference room. The glass walls looked out over the vehicle depot where 200 cars sat in neat rows, each one representing a piece of the empire she and Thomas had built. "He thinks he's going to keep his job," Marcus said without preamble. "He's positioning himself as the victim of a social media mob. His story is that you were the aggressor and he was protecting himself and the company." "Has he tried to contact anyone here?" Maya asked. "Multiple calls and texts to dispatch, to his supervisor, even to me," James said. "Asking for support, asking the company to make a statement backing him. He thinks we're going to defend him." "Why would he think that?" Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. Because companies usually do, Patricia said quietly. Because drivers usually get the benefit of the doubt, because he genuinely believes he didn't do anything wrong. Maya sat down at the head of the table, the same position she'd been in just 2 days ago when everything had been normal. Show me everything. Every recording, every log, every piece of documentation we have. For the next hour, they reviewed the evidence. The GPS logs showing Derek's vehicle arriving at her address at 7:26 and remaining there, stationary, until 7:49. The internal audio recording from the vehicle's black box system, which captured every word of their confrontation in crystal clarity. The dispatch logs showing that Derek had received the reservation details at 7:15 with all correct information. There was no ambiguity. There was no technical glitch. There was only Derek Walsh making a decision that a black woman couldn't possibly be the VIP client he was supposed to pick up, and then refusing to correct that decision even when presented with overwhelming evidence. "I want to talk to him," Maya said. Thomas looked at her sharply. "Maya, you don't need to do that. We can handle this through HR." "I want to talk to him," Maya repeated. "I want to understand how this happened. I want to hear from him directly why he thought any of his behavior was acceptable." "When?" Patricia asked. Maya checked her watch. 8:15 p.m. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., here. Don't tell him I'm going to be in the meeting. Tell him it's a standard review with HR and management regarding the incident." "He's going to recognize you," Marcus warned. "Eventually," Maya agreed. "But I want to see his face when he realizes who he was talking to. I want him to understand exactly what he did." Derek Walsh arrived at Cascade Elite Transport headquarters at 8:45 the next morning, 15 minutes early, which told Maya he was nervous despite his public bravado. She watched him on the security cameras as he checked in with reception, as he paced in the waiting area, as he checked his phone repeatedly. He dressed carefully for this meeting, a button-down shirt and slacks, his hair neatly combed. He looked like someone who was preparing to defend themselves, who had their arguments ready, who believed they could control the narrative. Maya sat in the conference room with Thomas, Patricia, James, and Marcus. The room had been arranged deliberately, a long table with seats on one side for the company representatives and a single chair on the other side for Derek. A power dynamic made physical. "He's ready," the receptionist's voice came through the intercom. "Send him in," Patricia said. The door opened. Derek walked in with his shoulders squared, his expression set in determined innocence. His eyes swept the room, taking in the executives he'd probably never met before, the serious faces, the formal setup. His gaze passed over Maya, paused, moved on, then snapped back. Recognition flickered across his face, confusion first, then a dawning horror that he tried to mask but couldn't quite manage. His mouth opened slightly. His confident posture wavered. "Mr. Walsh," Patricia said formally, gesturing to the empty chair, "please have a seat." Derek remained standing for a moment, his eyes locked on Maya, his brain clearly working overtime to make sense of what he was seeing. The woman from yesterday morning, here, in a meeting with top executives, sitting at the head of the table like she belonged there. "Is there a problem?" Thomas asked, his voice carrying an edge that could cut glass. "No, I thought." Derek's words trailed off as he slowly sank into the chair, his movements mechanical. His eyes never left Maya's face. Maya let the silence stretch, let him marinate in his confusion and growing panic. She'd positioned herself deliberately, sitting in the power seat, wearing a tailored black suit that broadcast authority, her natural hair styled in a way that was both professional and unapologetically bold. She wanted him to see exactly who she was before the words made it real. "Mr. Walsh," Patricia began, opening a folder in front of her. "We're here to discuss the incident that occurred yesterday morning at approximately 7:30 a.m. involving a refused service and a call to Seattle police. Do you remember this incident?" Derek's throat worked as he swallowed. "Yes, but there's been a huge misunderstanding. The media has twisted everything. Social media is out of control. I was just doing my job, following protocols." "What protocols?" James interrupted, his voice sharp. Derek blinked, thrown by the interruption. Security protocols, verification procedures. When something doesn't seem right, we're supposed to. Point to the specific section in your driver handbook, James said, sliding a thick manual across the table. Show us the protocol that allows you to demand additional verification from a client who has a confirmed reservation, confirmed payment, and is standing at the confirmed pickup address. Derek stared at the manual like it was a trap, which it was. His hands remained in his lap. You can't, Maya said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was calm, controlled, nothing like the heightened emotion of yesterday morning. Because that protocol doesn't exist. Derek's eyes snapped to her. Who are you? He asked, though his voice suggested he was beginning to suspect the answer. I'm the person you refused service to yesterday, Maya said. I'm the person you told to step back from your car. I'm the person you accused of scamming the system. I'm the person you threatened with police action. I'm the person you told to go back inside whatever house I was working in. The color drained from Derek's face. But more importantly, Maya continued, her voice gaining steel, I'm Maya Richardson, co-founder and chief operating officer of Cascade Elite Transport, the company you work for, the company whose vehicles you drive, the company whose reputation you damaged when you decided that a black woman couldn't possibly be a VIP client. The silence in the room was absolute. Derek's mouth opened and closed several times. His hands gripped the arms of his chair. Maya could see the exact moment the full reality crashed over him, could see his mind frantically replaying yesterday's events through this new lens. I couldn't have known, he stammered. Known what? Maya asked. That I own the company. Would it have mattered if I didn't? Would your behavior have been acceptable if I'd been anyone else? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Thomas interjected, leaning forward. Because from where we're sitting, watching the recordings, reviewing the evidence, reading your interview where you accused my wife of playing the victim card, it seems pretty clear what you meant. Derek's face went from pale to red. Your wife. My wife, Thomas confirmed coldly. The woman you made wait outside her own home for 23 minutes. The woman you humiliated in front of her neighbors. The woman you had handcuffed. No, you didn't succeed in that, did you? But you certainly tried. I never asked for her to be handcuffed, Derek protested. You called the police and claimed you felt threatened, Patricia said, pulling out a document. We have the 911 recording. You said, and I quote, there's a woman here who's harassing me and refusing to leave. I feel unsafe. You used language designed to escalate the situation, to position Mrs. Richardson as a threat. Marcus slid his tablet across the table, showing a paused video. This is the bystander footage. Please point to the moment where Mrs. Richardson behaved in a threatening manner. Derek looked at the screen, at the frozen image of Maya standing calmly on the sidewalk, briefcase in hand, several feet away from him. There was no threatening behavior to point to. There never had been. I felt uncomfortable, Derek said weakly. It was a judgment call. Based on what? Maya asked. Based on the fact that I had the correct reservation, the correct payment, the correct address, or based on the fact that I didn't look like what you expected a VIP client to look like. I never said anything about race, Derek insisted, his voice rising defensively. I told the reporter I don't see color. Don't, Maya cut him off sharply. Don't insult my intelligence with that line. You don't get to claim you don't see color when every action you took yesterday was informed by your assumptions about my color. She stood up, walking around the table to where files were stacked. She picked up the first one. This is the GPS log from your vehicle, she said, opening it. You arrived at my address at 7:26 a.m., 4 minutes early, which is good, professional, but then you sat there for 23 minutes. The pickup window is 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you're supposed to either call the client or mark them as a no-show. You did neither. Why? Derek said nothing. Maya opened another file. This is the internal audio recording from your vehicle. Our cars record everything for safety and quality assurance, something you signed acknowledgement of when you were hired. Let me read you some highlights. This ride isn't for you. There's been a mistake. You probably booked the wrong tier. I need to see your company credentials. And my personal favorite. I've been driving VIP clients for 3 years and I know what they look like. She set the file down and looked at him directly. What do VIP clients look like, Derek? That's not what I meant, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Then explain what you meant, Maya pressed. Because I'm trying to understand. I showed you my reservation. I showed you my payment confirmation. I showed you my ID. I was standing outside a $1 million home in Madison Park. What wasn't adding up for you? Derek's jaw worked, but no words came out. I'll tell you what wasn't adding up, Maya said. I didn't fit your mental image of wealth, success, and authority, and rather than adjusting your assumptions, you decided I was the problem. You decided I was trying to access something above my station. You decided I needed to be put in my place. That's not fair, Derek said, finding his voice. You're making this about race when it was about security, about protocols, about doing my job. Your job, Maya repeated. Let me tell you about your job, Derek. Your job is to provide excellent service to every client who books a ride. Your job is to arrive on time, greet clients professionally, ensure their comfort and safety, and deliver them to their destination. Your job is not to interrogate clients. Your job is not to demand verification beyond what the system provides. Your job is not to make assumptions about who deserves our service based on their appearance. James opened another folder. We pulled all your ride logs from the past 18 months. Do you want to know what we found? Derek's eyes widened slightly. You have a pattern, James continued. Clients with certain names, Jamal, Keisha, Darnell, Aaliyah, you consistently rate lower on internal metrics. Longer pickup times, more verification issues noted, more communication difficulties logged, but clients named Brad, Jennifer, Michael, Sarah, perfect records across the board. That's a coincidence, Derek said quickly. Those could be legitimate issues. We also pulled video footage from 5 different pickups over the past year, Marcus added. Would you like to see the difference in how you greet and interact with white clients versus black clients? The difference in your body language, your tone of voice, the extra questions you ask. Derek's hands were shaking now. You can't prove anything with that, that's subjective. Actually, we had it analyzed by a professional consultant who specializes in implicit bias and discrimination in service industries, Patricia said. Her report is very detailed and very damning. Maya sat back down, her eyes never leaving Derek's face. This isn't about one incident yesterday morning. This is about a pattern of behavior that we missed, that our systems didn't catch, that our training apparently didn't prevent, and I take responsibility for that. I built this company. I created these protocols, and somehow we still hired and retained someone who treats our clients differently based on race. I don't, Derek started. Stop, Maya said firmly. Stop claiming you don't see color. Stop claiming this was about security. Stop insulting everyone in this room by pretending you don't understand exactly what you did. You saw a black woman and made a series of assumptions that led to discrimination. Own it. The room fell silent. Derek sat there, his defenses crumbling, his face a mixture of anger, shame, and fear. Maya could see him cycling through emotions, trying to find a way out, a way to salvage this. What happens now? He finally asked, his voice small. Now, Patricia said, we discuss the consequences of your actions. I want to be very clear about something, Maya said, leaning forward. This isn't a witch hunt. This isn't about ruining your life. This is about accountability. This is about understanding that actions have consequences, especially when those actions harm others. Derek looked up at her, hope flickering in his eyes that perhaps this wasn't going to be as bad as he feared. Maya crushed that hope immediately. You're terminated, effective immediately. Derek's face went white. You can't do that. I have rights. I'll sue for wrongful termination. I'll go to the media. You already went to the media, Thomas interjected coldly. You gave an interview where you called my wife aggressive, claimed she was playing the victim card, and insisted you did nothing wrong. You doubled down on your behavior. You showed no remorse. You showed no understanding of what you did wrong. I'll sue anyway, Derek said, his voice taking on a desperate edge. I'll claim racial discrimination against me. You'll lose, Patricia said flatly. We have documented evidence of your discriminatory behavior. We have recordings. We have witness statements. We have a pattern of conduct. We have every single thing we need to defend this termination in any court in the country. Marcus slid a document across the table. This is your termination letter. It outlines the reasons for your dismissal: violation of company anti-discrimination policies, failure to provide equal service to all clients, making false reports to law enforcement, and damaging the company's reputation through your actions and subsequent media statements. Derek stared at the document like it was a death sentence. In many ways, it was. Maya knew that in the service industry, a termination for discrimination would follow him. The videos were viral. His name was attached to them. Future employers would Google him and find everything. I have a family, Derek said, his voice breaking. I have bills. You're destroying my life over one mistake. One mistake, Maya repeated slowly. Derek, if you had simply provided me with the service I paid for yesterday morning, we wouldn't be here. If you had apologized when you realized your error, we might have been able to address this differently. If you had shown any understanding or remorse, any willingness to learn and grow, we might have been able to work with you. She paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. But instead, you called the police on me. You gave an interview defending your actions. You accused me of lying. You claimed you were the victim. You showed us exactly who you are when you think no one important is watching. I didn't know you were important, Derek blurted out, then immediately seemed to realize what he'd said. The room went very still. And there it is, Maya said softly. The truth. You didn't think I was important. You didn't think I mattered. You didn't think I deserved respect or dignity or basic customer service because you looked at me and decided I wasn't important enough. She stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the vehicle depot. 200 cars, each one a testament to what she and Thomas had built. She thought about all the clients who'd been driven in those cars, all the employees who depended on this company for their livelihoods, all the people who would see how they handled this moment. Here's what's going to happen, Maya said, turning back to face Derek. You're going to sign your termination papers. You're going to return all company property. You're going to receive your final paycheck, which includes any accrued vacation time. We're not going to contest your unemployment claim, even though we have grounds to. Derek looked up, surprised. But, Maya continued, her voice hardening, you're also going to issue a public statement. A real apology. Not one of those I'm sorry if anyone was offended non-apologies. A genuine acknowledgement of what you did, why it was wrong, and what you've learned from this experience. And if I refuse, Derek asked. Then we'll let the public record speak for itself, Marcus said. The videos, the audio recordings, the evidence. We won't need to say anything more. Your actions will define you. Derek sat there, processing his options. Maya could see him calculating, trying to find an angle, a way to minimize the damage. But there was no angle. The evidence was overwhelming. The public opinion had already turned against him. He had no leverage. I want to say something, Derek said finally. Not as an excuse, just, I want you to understand. We're listening, Patricia said neutrally. Derek took a shaky breath. I grew up in a small town in Idaho. I never really knew any black people growing up. When I moved to Seattle, it was culture shock. Different people, different ways of doing things. I had to adjust. Maya said nothing, waiting. I thought I had adjusted, Derek continued. I thought I was doing fine. I have black coworkers I get along with. I've driven black clients before without issues. I really believed I wasn't racist. But, Maya prompted, but I realize now that I had these assumptions, these ideas about what success looks like, what wealth looks like, what authority looks like. And those ideas came from my upbringing, from my environment, from a lifetime of images and messages that told me certain people fit certain roles. He looked directly at Maya for the first time since the meeting began. When I saw you yesterday morning, standing on that sidewalk in jeans and a sweater, I couldn't reconcile what I was seeing with what I thought I knew about VIP clients. And instead of questioning my assumptions, I questioned you. I made you prove something you shouldn't have had to prove. I put you through something no one should have to experience. The room was silent. Maya studied Derek's face, looking for sincerity, looking for genuine understanding versus performative remorse designed to save himself. "I was wrong," Derek said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was so completely, horribly wrong, and I'm sorry for how I treated you. I'm sorry for calling the police. I'm sorry for the interview. I'm sorry for not seeing it until now when it's too late." Maya walked back to the table and sat down. She let the silence stretch for a long moment. "Thank you for that," she said finally. "For being honest, for owning what you did. That apology, Derek, that genuine acknowledgement, that's what should have come yesterday. That's what should have come before you defended yourself to the media." "I know," Derek said quietly. "The termination stands," Maya said firmly. "You can't undo what you did. You can't give me back the dignity you took from me yesterday. You can't erase the humiliation of being questioned and doubted and threatened outside my own home." Derek nodded, defeated. "But," Maya continued, "I want you to take what you've learned here and do better. I want you to examine your assumptions. I want you to understand that implicit bias isn't about whether you think you're racist. It's about the unconscious patterns that influence your behavior. And I want you to be honest about this experience if anyone asks, not as a way to salvage your reputation, but as a way to help others learn." She slid a business card across the table. "This is a consultant who specializes in diversity training and implicit bias education. You should contact her. Not for me, not for this company, but for yourself. Because the person you were yesterday is going to keep hurting people until you do the work to change." Derek picked up the card with trembling fingers. "Why are you helping me?" "I'm not helping you," Maya said. "I'm trying to help the next person you interact with, the next black woman who crosses your path, the next person who doesn't fit your mental image of who belongs in certain spaces. I'm trying to prevent this from happening again." Patricia pushed the termination documents toward Derek. "Sign here, here, and here." Derek signed without reading them, his hand shaking. When he finished, he looked up at Maya one more time. "For what it's worth," he said, "I really am sorry, and I really will do better." "I hope you do," Maya said. "I genuinely hope you do." Security escorted Derek out of the building. Maya, Thomas, and the executive team sat in silence for a long moment after he left. "That was harder than I expected," Thomas said quietly, reaching for Maya's hand. "It needed to happen," Maya replied. "All of it, the confrontation, the consequences, the honesty, because if we don't address this head-on, we're complicit." "What now?" James asked. Maya stood up, looking out at the depot again. "Now we do the harder work. We audit every complaint. We review our hearing practices. We enhance our training. We create real accountability measures. We make sure this never happens again." "The media is waiting for a statement," Marcus reminded her. "Then let's give them one," Maya said. "But not about Derek, about us. About what we're going to do differently, about the culture we're building, about accountability and growth and doing better." She turned to face her team. "This moment could destroy everything we've built, or it could be the moment we prove what kind of company we really are. I know which one I choose." The press conference was held at Cascade Elite Transport headquarters at 2 p.m. that same afternoon. Maya stood at a podium, flanked by Thomas, with Patricia and James in the background. The room was packed with reporters, cameras, and microphones. Beyond the doors, Maya knew thousands more were watching the live stream, waiting to see how the company would respond. She'd changed into a deep blue suit that photographed well, her hair styled elegantly, every inch the powerful executive she was. But she'd also made sure to wear the same silver necklace she'd been wearing yesterday morning, a deliberate reminder of continuity, of the same person in both moments. "Thank you all for being here," Maya began, her voice steady and clear. "My name is Maya Richardson, and I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer of Cascade Elite Transport. I'm also the woman in the video that's been circulating since yesterday morning." The cameras flashed, reporters leaned forward. "I want to start by acknowledging what happened," Maya continued. "Yesterday morning, I was refused service by one of our own drivers. I was questioned, doubted, and ultimately had the police called on me despite having a valid reservation, payment confirmation, and proper identification. This happened outside my own home in front of my neighbors and was captured on video by concerned bystanders. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. The driver, Derek Walsh, has been terminated from our company. His termination was based on clear violations of our anti-discrimination policies, failure to provide equal service to all clients, and a pattern of behavior that became evident during our investigation. We did not make this decision lightly, but we made it firmly, because discrimination has no place in our company. A reporter called out a question, but Maya held up her hand. I'll take questions in a moment, but first I need to say something important. This incident wasn't just about one driver making one bad decision. It was about the systems that allowed that decision to happen. It was about gaps in our training, our oversight, and our accountability measures. And as the leader of this company, I take full responsibility for those gaps. She pulled out a document and held it up. This is a comprehensive action plan that Cascade Elite Transport is implementing immediately. It includes mandatory implicit bias training for all employees. It includes enhanced monitoring of driver-client interactions. It includes the creation of an independent review board to investigate discrimination complaints. It includes partnerships with community organizations to ensure we're serving all clients with dignity and respect. Thomas stepped forward, adding, "We're also establishing a fund to support organizations that fight discrimination in the service industry. We're donating $100,000 immediately, and we're committing to ongoing contributions." Maya continued, "But more than policies and money, we're committing to a culture change. We're committing to doing the hard work of examining our practices, listening to feedback, and holding ourselves accountable. Because what happened to me yesterday shouldn't happen to anyone ever." She looked directly into the cameras. "I want to speak directly to other Black women who have experienced similar discrimination. I see you. I believe you. What happened to me happens to you in different forms every day, in stores, in restaurants, in professional settings, in places where you rightfully belong but others question your presence. It's exhausting, it's dehumanizing, and it's wrong." Her voice grew stronger. "I also want to speak to business leaders watching this. This is a moment of reckoning for all of us. It's not enough to have diversity statements on your website. It's not enough to have policies in a handbook that no one reads. You have to actively build and maintain a culture of inclusion. You have to listen when people tell you they've been discriminated against. You have to take action, real action, even when it's uncomfortable." She paused, taking a breath. "What happened to me had a silver lining, if you can call it that. I had power. I had resources. I owned the company. I could demand accountability and justice. But most people who experience discrimination don't have that power. They suffer in silence. They accept the mistreatment because fighting back feels too risky, too exhausting, too futile." Maya's eyes glistened slightly, but her voice remained strong. "So I'm using my power now. I'm using my platform. I'm using this moment to say, enough. Enough of the assumptions, enough of the microaggressions, enough of the casual cruelty that comes from judging people based on their appearance rather than their character. Enough of protecting institutions over people, enough of excuses." The room was absolutely silent. "Derek Walsh lost his job today. Some will say that's too harsh. Some will say everyone deserves a second chance, and maybe they're right. But the Black woman standing on that sidewalk yesterday morning deserved better than being treated like a criminal for trying to use a service she'd paid for. She deserved dignity. She deserved respect. She deserved to be believed." Maya gripped the podium. "I've been building this company for 8 years. I've worked 18-hour days. I've sacrificed time with family. I've poured my heart and soul into creating something excellent. And in 3 minutes yesterday morning, one person nearly destroyed it all. Not because of what he did to me. I'm fine, I'm strong, I'll survive. But because of what his actions revealed about the work we still need to do." She straightened up, her voice returning to its usual professional tone. "Cascade Elite Transport will emerge from this moment better than we were before. We will be the standard for how companies handle discrimination. We will be the example of what accountability looks like. And we will never, ever forget that our clients, all of our clients, deserve to be treated with dignity." Thomas stepped forward again. We're now open for questions. Hands shot up across the room. Maya pointed to a reporter in the front. Ms. Richardson, do you regret going undercover in your own company? No, Maya said without hesitation. Because now I know the truth. Now I can fix what's broken. Ignorance isn't bliss, it's complicity. Another reporter. Will you be pursuing legal action against Derek Walsh? No, he's lost his job. He's facing public consequences. My focus is on prevention, not punishment beyond what's already happened. Do you think this incident reflects a larger problem in the transportation industry? Absolutely, Maya said. And in hospitality, retail, healthcare, and virtually every industry where workers interact with the public, implicit bias training needs to be universal. Accountability needs to be real. And we need to stop treating discrimination as isolated incidents and start seeing the patterns. The questions continued for another 20 minutes. Maya answered each one with honesty, grace, and unwavering conviction. When it finally ended, when the cameras stopped rolling and the reporters began to disperse, she felt Thomas's hand on her shoulder. You were amazing, he said quietly. I was angry, Maya corrected, but I channeled it into something useful. Patricia approached. The response online is overwhelmingly positive. People are praising your leadership. Several other companies are already reaching out asking about our new policies. Good, Maya said. Share everything with them. This isn't proprietary. This is about raising the standard across the industry. That evening, Maya and Thomas sat on their back deck, overlooking the water. The Seattle skyline glittered in the distance, lights reflecting off the dark water. Maya held a glass of wine, her first moment of true quiet since the incident began. How are you really doing? Thomas asked. Maya considered the question. Exhausted, hurt, angry, but also hopeful. Is that strange? Why hopeful? Because we did the right thing, Maya said. Because we didn't hide from it or minimize it or protect our bottom line over our values. Because maybe, just maybe, some other company will see what we did and do better from the start. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled. What? Thomas asked. Keisha, she says 3 black women have applied for driver positions today. They said they saw the press conference and want to work for a company with real leadership. Thomas smiled. See, already making a difference. Maya looked out at the water, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. The daughter of a teacher and a postal worker, growing up in a working-class neighborhood in Oakland. The scholarship kid at Stanford who didn't quite fit in with the wealthy students. The young professional constantly proving herself in boardrooms that weren't built for her. She thought about all the times she'd been underestimated, dismissed, or doubted. All the times she'd had to be twice as good to get half the credit. All the times she'd swallowed her anger and kept moving forward because stopping meant giving up on her dreams. But yesterday, standing on that sidewalk, she'd been forced to confront something she'd tried to protect herself from believing. That even when you build the table, even when you own the company, even when you have power and resources and success, you can still be reduced to someone's racist assumptions in an instant. It was a painful truth, but it was also a clarifying one. Because now Maya understood her mission more clearly than ever. It wasn't just about building a successful company. It wasn't just about creating jobs or generating profit. It was about creating spaces where everyone, regardless of race, background, or appearance, could be treated with dignity. It was about using her power to protect people who didn't have the same power. It was about making sure that no one else had to stand on a sidewalk, holding proof of their legitimacy, and still be questioned about whether they belonged. I'm going to make this company everything I envisioned, Maya said quietly. Everything I dreamed it could be, not despite what happened, but because of it. Thomas took her hand. I know you will. In the days that followed, the story continued to resonate. Other people came forward with their own experiences of discrimination in service industries. Conversations began about implicit bias, about the assumptions people carry, about the exhaustion of constantly proving your worth to people who have already decided you don't have any. Derek Walsh issued his public apology as agreed, It was genuine and thoughtful, acknowledging specifically what he'd done wrong and committing to education and growth. Maya hoped he meant it. She hoped he would do the work. But she also knew that individual growth, while important, wasn't enough. Systems needed to change. Industries needed to change. Society needed to change. And Maya Richardson, standing in her power, using her voice, refusing to be silenced or diminished, was going to be part of that change. Because she'd been refused a ride by a driver who didn't know she owned the company. And she'd turned that moment of discrimination into a movement for accountability, dignity, and justice. That was power. That was purpose. That was the real story. Where are you from? Tell us in the comments below. And if you're loving this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more.